Good afternoon, and a warm welcome to the Institute for Advanced Study in Princeton, New Jersey. For those who don't know me, I'm Sabine Schmidtke, the permanent faculty at the School of Historical Studies representing Near Eastern Studies, and co-hosting today's webinar with me is Maria Mercedes Tuya, representing digital scholarship here at the IAS.
We're very glad that you could join us and hope that you're as excited as we are for having the opportunity to embark in what promises to be a fascinating journey.
And it's a great pleasure for me now to introduce our two speakers who will present the joint project Damast, a research system to analyze multi-religious constellation in the Islamicate world. Dorothea Weltecke holds the chair for European history of the Middle Ages at Humboldt-Universität in Berlin. Her scholarship focuses on the history of Eastern Christianity, the history of minorities in the Middle East in more general terms, as well as church history. And among Professor Weltecke's most recent publications is the 2020 monograph, Minorities and Majorities, Studies on the Religious Complexity of Afro-Eurasian Middle Ages, and her 2021 monograph, The Description of the Time by Moore Michael the Great, a study on its historical and its historiographical context. Florian Jäckel is a software engineer currently working for DBLP Computer Science Bibliography, a project under the auspices of the Schloss Dagstuhl Leibniz Center for Informatics. Dr. Jäckel is equally trained in theology and Semitic studies. Among his recent publications is Arabic Nutfa and Syriac Nutta in Avicenna's and Bar Hebreus works, and his translation of text by Paul of Antioch are forthcoming. Now today, Dorothea and Florian will speak for about 20 to 30 minutes, and this will leave us some 20 minutes for discussion in the end.
We ask that you please keep your microphones muted during the presentation. You can add comments or questions in the chat during or after the presentation. And now, with further ado, I pass the floor to Dorothea.
Thank you so much for the invitation to take part in this interesting series of online talks. I would like to present a tool for the visualization of non-Muslim and Muslim communities in the Islamicate world from the 8th to the 14th century. I'm very happy for the opportunity to do so in this round here. I would like to say first share some remarks on the project's early history, and then we go and present the project and how you can use it as a research platform. We know now so much more about the multi-religious history of the Islamicate world. I don't think I have to go into that very much. There has been a lot of research during the last 20, 30 years. However, many basic questions are still open. And one of them is rather simple. Where did religious groups live at a given time and at a given place? Could we know the answer to this question, we would be better equipped to investigate the given social and religious constellations in time and space, and especially the power structures that came with them. And when I taught history of religions at the University of Constance, I discovered quickly that one fundamental tool is missing altogether, and there is no map to show locations of diverse religious populations. Rather, we are used to maps like these ones, where we have the maps of the so-called world religions from 750 to 1450 that demonstrate the exact reverse of what we know now to be the typical medieval situations, the maps which suggest religious uniformity. It is true, there have been attempts to demonstrate the diverse churches in the Islamicate world on one single map with the TAFO, the Tübinger Atlas des Vorderen Orients. And you see a lot of icons with different shapes and forms. The forms indicate chronological factors, and the shapes of the little crosses and the colors represent the hierarchy of the churches and the different denominations. For didactical reasons, I experimented with another map published in the Atlas der Kirchengeschichte. Here you see the two churches of the Syriac tradition. The blue dots indicate the Syriac Orthodox Church and the red ones, the Church of the East. Again, the forms of the icons indicate chronology, round ones for earlier centuries, triangular ones for the later centuries. For my experiment, I wanted to show the religious constellations in all of the centers of the Syriac Orthodox Church. My question was whether there were bishops or metropolitans of other denominations beside the Syriac Orthodox hierarchy, and whether there were Jewish or Muslim institutions in the same towns and cities. So you see that all the cities with the flags, they are the Syriac Orthodox metropolitans or metropolitan sees. And we added green icons for the Melkite Church, black icons for the Armenian Church, blue, purple icons for the Latin Church. Muslims indicated half moons, Jews by the Magen David, without further differentiation. And with the result of this map is that we learn on first sight that the Syriac Orthodox Metropolitan See was always located in towns with several different communities. And I tried another experiment. I got this printed in drawn in a paper from 2013, and tried another experiment for a conference. I used the province of Jazeera as a background, and again did the same thing, looked at the same cities, added icons of different religious communities, and again you see the diversity in these cities, but you can also see that although there is now one Muslim political unity, at least for this earlier time of the Jazeera, still the older borders of the Syriac churches, the Syriac traditions are still can be seen. It remains visible in the distribution of the metropolises even 670 and 700 years later. So there's things to be seen by looking at maps, and there are things to be seen by analyzing maps. The primary sources, of course, often ignore other groups, and they only cover certain areas. So there are certain areas within, for example, the Syriac Orthodox Church, where I started my inquiries, where we know virtually nothing about. Looking at maps can make us ask new questions. For example, there is the city of Tiberias, or the town of Tiberias. It's a sea of lake of Gennesaret, and we see here that there is a metropolitan for the Syriac Orthodox Church since the 9th century. So why is that the case? We know nothing about the Syriac Orthodox Christians in Tiberias, and they actually highlighted the community later on, but we have no information on them. What could have been the interest of the church? And we can find out, of course, from the context that Tiberias became a political center under the Umayyads, and it was also an important site for healing, baths, and pilgrimage. There were good reasons to establish a new clerical structure and demonstrate spiritual power. Now we know something about Tiberias and the Syriac Orthodox. We only could come up with through visualization and by looking at maps, studying maps, and asking questions about it. During my work on these experiments, two further points presented themselves. First, basic research is needed. And secondly, we certainly reached the limits of maps, printed maps, rather quickly. When you look at this, when we try to combine different churches, different chronological stages, and different religious groups, then the limits of the complexity of a drawn map are fairly visible. Yeah? It's just getting too crowded, and you can't understand what's going on. For what is interesting to me, we would have to combine the complexity of the TAFO and add all the other icons for Jews and Muslims, and that's not feasible. So the idea to attempt a digital visualization presented itself. However, during the time when we worked at it, there was no ready-made solution for that. And the reason for that is that with the drawn map, you can arrange the icons, but with the GIS map, every dot with the same coordinates would fall on top of each other. You can't see anything at all. So a new research on digital visualization was needed at this point to show the dots beside each other. And that is where the project began, as a cooperation between the Institute for Visual Analytics in Stuttgart. Steffen Koch, a computer scientist, and I won a grant for this project and started working at it from both sides of computer science and history. The historians were together data, review the sources, and think about the topography, and the computer scientists planned to develop new measures to visualize data in a multi-coordinated view. The basis of our research was an SQL database. I will hear about the technical details a little more later on. We gathered data for the historical period between the emergence of Islam in the 7th century and the end of many Christian centers in Asia after the invasion of the Mongol ruler Tamerlan at the end of the 14th century. We were interested in all the tolerated groups, Christians and Jews, but also Zoroastrians and Buddhists, grosso modo those groups who were covered by the Dhimmis status. At the core of the project, there were two basic quantitative questions. How many cities or towns in the Islamic world hosted institutionalized communities of Dhimmis? And second, how many different religious communities were living in these cities at a given point in time? We started out with a sample of 250 cities and up to 5 different communities in one given city. And our research led to approximately 450 cities and towns with up to 10 to 15 communities. And these numbers represent an initial results. During the duration of our project, many individual hard decisions, however, had to be made on how to include data and how to determine the institutional status of a group or its doctrinal orientation. And that was a problem we had to deal with from the historian side, especially for centuries when the demarcation between the 3 faiths were not entirely fixed and had only became apparent during time, but still we had to find a definition of some sort. Studying the data, therefore, became an unforeseen adventure by which provided us with many more insights and results that we can share with the visualization. We included already available data from Lexica, atlases, and lists like the Oriens Christianus Novus by Fillet. This data was reviewed, evidence by the historians, and evaluated according to stages of confidence. That is, are we certain of a particular piece of information? Do we consider it probable? Is it contested? That is, there are reasons that speak for it, but also against certain data. Might it be uncertain? And there are more reasons to believe that the data will be false than it will be true, or it might be false. All the data was reviewed by research, also with primary sources, but at this stage, we did not add data of our own. That's very important when you use the device. Working with evidences and visualization on this level meant that we had to simplify our data. Rather than working with fuzzy religious affiliations that we're used to talk about now, we had to define, as I said, the denominational groups to make them comparable. At the same time, we had to reduce our data. We only had 4 years initially and found some support. In order to get an overview, we had to concentrate on certain data. We only included groups with stable institutional forms at a given place. That is, some Christian merchants we might hear about in passing with no bishop were not recorded. We acknowledge that we lose many interesting historical data by this decision, but in data of more ephemeral strands would also distort the results of the visual investigation. We also concentrated on cities and towns, more or less for the same reason. And this again brought us to the difficult question as to what should be defined as a city or a town. Our answer is more pragmatical than sophisticated. We followed the evaluation of a given location by the early ecclesiastical structures. Bishoprics were established alongside political centers in the Roman Empire, and this system was more or less adapted to Christian communities outside of the Roman confines. Christian hierarchy is rather systematically recorded, so there are lists of bishops and place names, and hence we got our first sample of cities and towns that certainly contained Dhimmis. These places we screened for Muslim and Jewish institutions. In the second phase, we took centers of Jewish learning and screened these for Muslim and Christian institutions. And we added the categories of Al-Muqaddasi as one example in time and screened cities and towns categorized as important by him for Christian and Jewish institutions. The computer scientists developed an application to visualize our data that Florian will show you presently. The web application was called Damast by Max Franke, the PhD student who developed the visualization techniques. Not otherwise interested in the Middle East or history, nonetheless found a very appropriate metaphor, we thought, for these multi-religious societies. Damast is a German term for both the Damask cloth and the Damascus steel, and the cloth displays patterns by colored vertical and horizontal yarns. Though only one yarn is visible at certain points of the cloth, both are always present. And the Damascus steel, different kind of alloys are combined, heated, folded, forged again and again, and the result is stronger and more flexible than its components are. To conclude my short introduction, I would like to stress that we learned a lot as we collected data and made our decisions. We learned that there are limits of the doable in the drawn map, and there are also limits for the digital visualization. In both cases, the visualization asks for historical interpretation. When working with Damast, we ask you to keep in mind that we did not add our own research data and only evaluated, but did not change the given material. Bringing it together at all was the aim that we wanted to achieve. It is a visualization of data, not a historical map. Thus, the results you see might be surprising and enlightening, and they are reliable insofar as the data is reviewed. At other points, you will find it very incomplete. We know of thriving Melkite communities in Aleppo, for example, but only very few appeared in the sources we gathered, for example. We hope to continue working with this instrument and include more sets of data on the countryside and also of our own research data. So far for now, and I would like to pass the word to Florian.
Thank you. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Great. Okay. So I will first introduce some technical aspects and some aspects of the data structure, etc. And then we want to move to actually show you how the visualization works. Our code is freely available at GitHub. So if you follow the link posted here, you come to the GitHub repository. This is rather technical, of course, but you could also ask technical questions here with the issues, or also file bugs, etc. Behind, Dorothea already mentioned, is a relational database, and the web framework that actually does the visualization is based on Python using Flask. There's the front end that is what we will look at today. So the map and the timeline, etc. You will see that. What we're not looking at is a back end that is available after login. You have can add users that are able to add data in the background. However, the version that you will see today and that's publicly available has fixed stable data. So we don't use the backend for new data. So what kind of data do we have in the database? There are, of course, all kinds of different places. There are different religious groups. They're ranked hierarchically. I think Dorothea already made the point that this is maybe not the best from the humanities point of view, but it's very hard to encapsulate it otherwise in the data structure. So you have certain what we call general religious affiliations, 4 of them. I guess the abbreviations are pretty clear: Christian, Islam, Judaism, and other. And then there are subgroups. I only included some examples here on that slide. Then, of course, there's time as an aspect of the data. And then there's the sources. And tags. I will talk about them a little more in a minute. And then there's also free text nodes that can be attributed to different aspects of the data. So a quick overview over the data you could get on the homepage of Damast. So you would here find a list of the sources very quickly. Or here's a list of the religious groups. If you want more technical aspects, you could go to the PDF documentation that's in the GitHub repository. Looks like this. Very Max, the developer, was very extensive. So everything is documented well. This is an overview of the different tables and database, etc. However, there are also some aspects that are implemented in the software, but are not used in the public version that's accessible. So one possibility, if you would adapt the software on your own server, would be to actually have documents in the background, probably primary sources, but also any other kind of material. And you could do annotations in the text and generate evidence from these annotations. So let's say you have a sentence about a certain religious group being at a certain place at a certain time. You could annotate those different pieces of information in that sentence and generate an evidence from that. And also there's a possibility to add persons to the database. Again, that's not implemented in our current version. So I repeat some figures that Dorothea already mentioned. We have more than 8,800 pieces of evidence, more than 450 places, or around 450 places, sorry, around 20 religious groups, 21 works of reference, and 15 different tags. So what is actually a piece of evidence? It's a piece of information for presence of a given religious group out of the list that I showed to you briefly at a given place from the list of places that we gathered during a given time span based on a given source and attributed with one or more tags. And I also want to talk about the tags that attributes additional information not represented by the other types of data. And that gives a big flexibility. You could even annotate metadata. So for example, you could say, okay, these pieces of evidence are still under review or reviewed, or and then you could remove that label or that tag once it's reviewed. And thus manage the data in your own data in your own version. In our version, we use it mostly not for metadata, but for these kind of aspects. So, for example, you could tag it with the piece of evidence as a bishopric, as a metropolitan see. These are all examples for the Christian part. Then Dorothea already mentioned the capitals according to Al-Muqaddasi. And also there's a tag for pieces of evidences for a synagogue or yeshiva, etc. What kind of questions could you ask Damast? These are Damast. This is just examples. For example, what religious groups coexisted in Jerusalem and Damascus between a given or in a given time span, so between 1000 and 1300? Where did Armenians, West Syrians, and Latins coexist? Did metropolitan or patriarchal sees shift over time? Which other places have same constellations of religious coexistence in the area around a given place? Again, that's just examples. We will look at some more in a minute. Dorothea already talked about the different aspects of confidence, so I'm going to skip that for now. What's very important, though, are the reports that you can file. You can create a report as a reference and put that, for example, in a footnote of your own research, or to go back to that report later and somehow change the results of your research. So a report makes the result of a certain query to our data permanently accessible and thus citable. So at the bottom here, we'll show you the example very soon. There's a unique identifier here. And if you save this page, for example, as a bookmark, or if you note down the identifier, you can go back to it, or as I said, reference it. It contains different things, a query description, so what exactly were the filters, etc., that you use to get this constellation of data. Then there's also a PDF version you can download. You could also go back to the visualization with the filters that you originally used, applied, and then refine them and file a new report, for example. And there's also, of course, a small information on how to cite. So in a nutshell, a report is a stable representation of a specific state of the visualization. Let's look at an example. So there's the query description here. It is actually verbalization of all the different filters we used. And then there's a list of the pieces of evidence. So for example, the one result is the Armenian church in Afamia. And here's the time. And then these are the free text notes I was talking about. And you could go back to this report anytime or show it in the visualization. That's a certain state of the filter. So I selected this area, selected only certain religions. I excluded some. We will look at it again in a minute. But there's also another thing. In addition to the visualization, these are the place pages. Similar to the report, they put together all information we have on a place in our database. And an example here is the city of Antakya. There's again a free text note. So this is equivalent to the modern town of Antakya. You here have a mini map where it is located, also the coordinates. Then there's all kinds of alternative names. So if you want to type Armenian name, you will also find it in the database. Reference to external pages, for example, the Encyclopedia of Islam or the Getch Dictionary. And then there's an overview of all the data associated with the place. But after all these rather detailed aspects, maybe we can just go and try. If you want, you can visit this page on your own computer, of course, and play around. But I will also show you some things that you can do here. As I said, there are different views on the data. The map is, of course, at the center with all the different pieces of evidence placed on the map. You have a timeline here at the bottom. This is the list of religions. this is the list of the locations here at the right side. And then you have different confidences, the sources, and the tags. So all the different aspects that I mentioned. And the crucial thing is you can use any of these views to filter the data. And as soon as you apply the filters, the other views will change as well. So to demonstrate that, if you show only, let's say, Melkites and Shiites, then not just the map will change, but also the timeline, also the list of places that have evidence of these two religions, etc. I think I still have 5 minutes, and I want to demonstrate it with more structured examples.
Yes, please do.
Okay, so in the first example, let me reset the visualization. We will focus solely on the presence of religious groups or their constellations. So we will not use any other filters, which means we will search across all locations, the entire time period, all data sources, and all tags with the default confidence settings. So what I will do is I will select only the Church of the East here and the Shiites. And if I apply this, you will see data where either Shiites and or the Church of the East is present. And then you can see again here how it changes. You can also have a count here. There are 674 pieces of evidences for the Church of the East, etc. But maybe you want to do something more advanced. That's the advanced setting here in the religion view. So we could search for places with either Church of the East and Shia, or Melkites and Shia. And then you get a different result, of course. Now, if you ever use the visualization and you're not really sure what's going on, you can always click on the small question marks here, and you get a very extensive description with examples also. And there's, in addition, another documentation with all the elements here and also a brief introduction. So there's a different use case, of course. I will again reset the visualization. That's fastest if you just reload the page. I will choose all religions as you can see here. And now we will filter by location and time. The selection by time is very simple. You can just click and drag here on the timeline, and that what is highlighted is what is represented here. So the darker aspects, right and left, are left out. And locations can also be filtered. You could either filter via the map, for example, draw a polygon around a certain area like this, and then you need to click on this small floppy disk to apply the filter. And maybe one more important thing to note, the glyphs here on the map, they're clustered. So if you zoom in further, they're more detailed. If you zoom out, they're less detailed, but you can also check this and then you will see every single location. But of course, that's getting cluttered if you move out like this. So that's why there's the clustered view. And also, you could, of course, use the, I will remove the filter that I put on the map here with the trash bin. Now we will see everything again, but you could also use the place search. Maybe someone wants to mention a place that I should look for. George, maybe?
Sorry?
What kind of place would you look for?
Oh, Harput.
So how would you spell it?
I'll put it in the chat.
Okay.
2 spellings.
Can I see the chat somehow? Not sure where it is.
It went just to you,
Ah,
Florian.
yeah, Harput. Okay. So, bad example. It seems not to be in our database. Okay, what I wanted.
Charles was wondering about Mandeans, if you have them anywhere.
Pardon?
Charles was wondering if you have anything on the Mandeans.
I think they are here as a religious group. So what we could do, we could just choose them. And as Dorothea mentioned, the important thing is there might be much more. That's Manichaeans. Okay, I'm sorry.
No, there are no Mandeans. I don't think so.
Okay.
No, there are no.
But maybe there's one important thing to point out. There might be more evidence for Manichaeans. I know it's not Mandaeans, but Manichaeans somewhere else. But again, that's not in the sources that we recorded for our database.
Yes, of course. Yeah, maybe could answer to that, to Charles. There is a lot of documentation. That's true. The religions other than Christian, Jewish, and Muslims are really only cursory. So there is no systematic research that we have done on them. We have just recorded them on in the view of the cities that we have filtered through, looking for main places of Christian and Jewish hierarchies. So the next phase would be to include all the important centers for other religions, and then screen these again for who else is there. So from the way we moved forward, you can't possibly look at every town or every city and then start screening them for different religious communities. So we started with those where we knew from start that there would be, because we know we have a list of bishops. And as I was saying, this is only a start. It's always possible to include more data if it is being included in the reduced way that we have it at the moment. But we didn't have time to do anymore. As simple as that. So what we can do now is to show what would be possible and have some experiments working with this, and maybe also change the conception behind it if it is too flawed, if it doesn't work. But it certainly is very limited data that we have. So only 8,800 pieces of evidence. And more questions?
Okay, here's a question in the chat about Zoroastrians. So maybe we can also check how many evidences we have for the Zoroastrians. And there are 10 places that we have in our database with Zoroastrians. And here you could check what kind of sources represent them. And then you will see that it's the Encyclopedia of Iran and the second and first Encyclopedia of Islam that that have information on them. I wanted to show one last thing, which is has not worked with the place name that George provided, but if you type here DAM for Damascus, you will find that there's one place in orange that actually has DIM in its main toponym, but the main toponym of Damascus in our database is actually Dimashq, but it's still displayed here in yellow because an alternative toponym has DIM in the name. And if we go again to the place page, you will see the alternative names here. Okay. So I think I will leave it at that for now because we're running out of time, and maybe take some question. What do you think, Dorothea?
Yeah.
Well, thank you both so much. I mean, this is absolutely amazing and super powerful. I think the questions already point to the big issue. What is the future of Damast? I mean, because apparently you also need funding, you need curating, etc. And I was thinking particularly about I mean, Dorothea, your fascinating project or upcoming project about the color fonts, because if you would feed into this database the data, especially place names and names of people as well as dates into this database, I think that would be, in addition, of course, to other sources that we have, that would be extremely interesting to refine the map that we have about literary activities and scholarly activities of the various Christian communities throughout the Middle East.
That's the main idea, actually. So that what I try with this application, this grant application, is to find funding for the continuation of Damast and for feeding Damast with new sources on one side, and on the other hand, working with this fascinating source material. But because there are so many data on place names and time in this source material, it would be really great to have it integrated here, because then we would light up the Cora around the cities a bit, and would see villages and could see the dynamic between cities and villages.
Amazing.
Yeah. And of course, Chaput and Tessenziat and all these things, this is what you have to get used to. That first we made some decisions, somebody in the team, Ralf Bartschok, Bernd Fest, or somebody else made the decision how to have the first name, the main reference, and then it takes sometimes a little to find the place name that you're looking for. But working with this, one gets used to doing it. Florian and I haven't been doing it so much for the last 2-3 months, so we use practice. Yeah.
Sabine Schmidtke said it's a very powerful tool, and the thing about powerful tools is always that you really have to master them. So I can see that you were kind of overwhelmed with the complexity. I'm actually also, if I return back after a month or two, I have to get oriented again. Where is what? But as I said, it's very well documented, so you just need to take a little time sometimes to read again through the different manuals for the different views, etc. And as I said, they also have examples, and of course you can feel free to write an email to us. Yes,
and there's one question by Maria. Could you please define the pieces of evidence and the types of sources?
Yes.
Maybe you could switch over to the slide with the pieces of evidence, or
And Maria has another question that is related a few before. Have you looked at ARPOA, the database of the Greek Orthodox Church of Antioch developed in Beirut?
No.
No.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Please look at the list of our sources.
The easiest access is here on the main page. If you go to data used and then the sources, you will see a list that we used.
So the tip was very important for us, and the TAFO, also because Bernd Fest, who's prepared one part of the tip, has been part of the team. So that was one important source, and also the prosopography of the Byzantine worlds prepared by the BBAW, by the Berlin Brandenburg Academy. And there place names and data for the entire Byzantine East, which could be used in a digital fashion also.
Mhm.
But yeah, we have to make a list of all those that should go in next time when we have new opportunities to work on it.
Yeah,
There's another.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Is it possible to search by language? And I think very related. I think for the growing of the data, did you ever consider crowdsourcing as a future?
No.
Okay.
We didn't because we use the data that has been worked on quite a lot from the lexica and other, so they are already being processed a lot, and every piece of these evidences was reviewed by us. So crowdsourcing, then we would have to have different phases perhaps where people can throw in more data and then it can be reviewed. Also, we wanted to have an overview. If somebody starts crowdsourcing or somebody starts integrating some data he or she knows from her regional research, then you get a lot of clustered data for a certain particular point, and that distorts the overall picture. That's why we haven't done that so far. When we don't get a huge sample of sources that's really stretching all over the region, we would get a lot of distortion.
Right. Yeah. So searching by language.
Could someone or Mariam, could you maybe say what exactly you mean? So you're thinking of another view where you have a list of languages?
Yes, exactly. I'm particularly interested in where languages were spoken and when they started to be spoken. And also things like there were languages that were no longer spoken in certain times, but were still used in liturgy, for example.
Yeah.
Particularly, to give you an example, is when the onset of Judeo-Arabic, for example, in certain Muslim lands. Yeah, so that's what I'm interested in. If the map can show some kind of by coloring or something similar, the region, the languages spoken in a particular region, how they interact, if they're written languages, spoken languages, liturgical ones.
That would be absolutely fascinating to have a map of languages, wouldn't it? Also of the different layers of the different communities. But this is not at the moment presented here at all. And I wouldn't know.
Just thinking about how you could implement that. But the thing is that different or the same community might use different languages, right? So
and I don't know whether our dots and our glyphs with the different communities would help here at that point.
No.
Then the complexity is getting multiplied because each of the different dots, let's say for the Syriac Orthodox, in some areas they speak Arabic, in some areas they speak Aramaic, and this is here we only have this one orange color for the Syriac Orthodox community. So it would have to be an entirely new layer of the visualization that would be, and we would have to have good data.
I mean, the colophons will give you those data.
I'm collecting data for spoken languages and written languages, and I would really like to see it mapped. I really would like to see it mapped, but I don't at the moment. I don't see how this also could go into the same visualization. Maybe it could be the basis for another one or something. I don't know.
I mean, a question and a comment, but I mean, I think for the languages, I mean, once you start integrating the colophons, because then you have information about the manuscripts, about the language of the manuscripts. Yeah. I mean, that could be one element. Of course, it's not the spoken language, but that could perhaps lead towards that. And the question I have, I see nothing. I mean, to what extent did you look into Ethiopia and I mean the Horn of Africa?
We didn't. Only the Patriarchy of Antioch and Jerusalem and Alexandria and the yeah. Thank you. So there, and we started integrating more material for Christianus, Oriens Christianus Novus, but then the funding was ended, so we didn't cover it. There were some bishoprics that we started integrating the material, but for this project, for the BW project, we only covered the Middle Eastern patriarchates and Christian churches under the Muslim rule, and Ethiopia apparently is not.
Okay.
Yeah. But that would be, of course, again, an obvious extension that we would like to have. One thought about languages, you're right, one could do this. One could, with this new data, one could have a tag, and with the tag could have the language. And then one could filter with the tag and see some kind of a language distribution. Yeah, I think.
There is one more question in the chat. Is it planned in the frame of this project to go beyond the religious groups to the cults of the Middle East as a second phase, for example, the Mastakis or the Khorandins?
Again, the complexity is already partly too high, and the problem is that what kind of things do we map? Do they match? Can they be compared? Are they on the same level of whatever we want to compare? And at the moment, we don't map cults, nor traditions, nor religious groups for any matter. We don't see regions of certain cults, but we have only very stable, institutionalized groups that are affiliated to a given tradition, Jewish, Christian, Muslim, more of them. So we would really have to think whether we could, when we integrate cults, can we map them in a geographical manner that is comparable to what we have in this map? Or do we have to have different layers where there are different stages of institutionalization that we could find? So it's not a map of religious movements and cults as such of the Middle East, but it visualizes data of institutionalized groups, a very reduced manner for which we have sources. But yes, of course, as soon as you give an evidence with the place and a source, then we can visualize it. That's the technical problem is not the problem. It's more a problem of the conception and of the possibility to really compare and to get a useful picture of what we see when we visualize it.
So at this stage, I mean, coming back to the idea of at least controlled crowdsourcing, like if someone has a source and is working along your lines of filtering and preparing the data, would you accept data that are being sent to you?
At the moment, I don't have the opportunity to do so, but we could think about how we could integrate it, yes. And we could have it also in different stages, that we store it someplace and visualize it later. At the moment, I'm on my own because Florian left me. And so at the moment, really we need more structure, more funding to continue to work with this project. At the moment, I couldn't process it, actually, couldn't. But of course, I would be happy if to gather more sources and more material, more data.
Okay.
But I mean, what would be possible for anyone who wants to use the thing with his or her own data is to set up the visualization on a server, and then put the data in, and then later on, of course, you could dump that data and import it somewhere else. So that's principally possible. Because the question, of course, would arise if you do the crowdsourcing, who manages that? I think crowdsourcing is a great idea, but you have to have resources to manage the crowd, and you know, that's not that easy. But of course, that would be great.
Yeah. Super.
Yeah, you have presented such an amazing thing. I mean, it's like, it's candy. Can I have more? Can I have more? I can understand everybody asking, give me this, give me that. And I can understand the crowdsourcing. I mean, I've seen that you have very thoughtful, validated all the data that you have. And that's really what gives you confidence on what you're showing. So definitely I've seen crowdsourcing where, you know, you need to have the people who can validate.
Yeah.
But this is amazing.
And the overview, I think, also, because then when you have cluster, it's already could be misleading that there are times or areas where there are more data than in others, and the interpretation could go wrong in saying that there are more people here, or there's more happening here, and this would multiply if we had integration of certain regional studies that then enhance the number of data, but not only in a comparable fashion, only for a certain spot on the map.
Yeah, there's something I can show you here. You could, here, if you choose this option, heat map of count of evidence, you see where it's heated or red, you have more pieces of evidence than at other places. And from there, you can see that the way we collected our data has a focus here on that area. So probably if you would put in other sources of data, the heat map would change, and thus the data has a different, yeah, I wouldn't say quality, but of course quality for other regions. Let's put it that way. There's another heat map, for example, for the diversity. That's also very interesting. But again, we probably don't have pieces of evidences for these areas where it's less dense. So you always have to interpret the data. It's not as if you can take this and say it's like this, right?
Wow. Don't keep me showing me tools, because it's like, give me more, give me more.
There's another, I think.
Go for it.
Provide users with the possibility to annotate the data of each record. So what you're saying is, if you have an annotation to make about a certain piece of evidence, I mean, you could write an email to us, and we would put it in our data backlog. But the thing is that we have stable data at this point. If we would add data permanently to this public version, the references using the reports would not be stable. And there's no versioning behind the reports at this point. So that's why we decided to have like a first version that's has stable data. So of course, you could give us corrections to the data, but it wouldn't appear immediately in the public version. I'm not sure if I made that point clear.
So that would be, it's like the first edition of the book, and then we would have to have a second edition, and that would be a second version where we then have the records that only are related to the second version or only to the first. So in order to make sure that the reports are always producing the same results, there need to be well, fixed versions, and also for matters of work economy. Well, I think one last example I would like just to mention is that when you filter places and times and tags, for example, the major metropolitan cities, then you will see very quickly how dynamic they move. So we have filtered now certain groups, but you can also see places of functions of places also that move. And with more data, I think we could see a lot more on that side. But well, it's the first edition of a Pioneer project.
And I think it still has bugs because
it still has bugs, yes.
I actually found some bugs when we were preparing the presentation today, and I need to file them. Yeah, because I can't choose the metropolitan seas for some reason.
It's okay. You have given us so much that we are okay with the bugs.
Now it works. So these are
There you go.
These are the metropolitan seas by the different churches. And if you zoom in, of course, you see that it's much more. And here you see the count to 1,205. Yep.
This is amazing. Thank you very much. It is hard to stop such an interesting conversation, but we need to come to an end. And let me thank again Dorothea and Florian for having been today with us today and for having shared your amazing work. You have enticed us to want more. I hope you don't hold us that against us, but I also want to thank all of you that have joined us. Please stay tuned for upcoming events in the areas of NES and digital scholarship at IAS over the course of this academic year and next year too. And all other events are listed on the relevant pages. I don't want to say goodbye. I will say we'll see you later at another time because we hope you can join us again. Again, many thanks to you, Dorothea and Florian, and many wishes for much success.
Thank you.